Good morning, YELM students and staff. We are excited to host the Professionals by Pathway Career Exploration event to help students connect their learning to career opportunities. I am very excited to welcome Frank Hudik, who is a retired Navy veteran and also a former Boeing engineer. So good morning. And before we get started, I just wanted to remind everyone that this is being recorded so future students can benefit from our speakers. And we'll have about the next 30 minutes to learn about your career fields and the education that is needed to enter and grow within your industries and what advice you have for our students. And I will make sure to monitor the Q&A for you. And if not a lot of questions come in, I have a good list of my own. So go ahead and take it away, Frank.
Okay, good morning and thank you for the invitation. This is a great opportunity to connect with the community. As Nicole said, I am a retired naval officer, so I'm going to kind of go through my career and my education experience only to help you folks out, that show you something that's possible. This is not about me, it's about you, and I welcome the question and answer period at the end. But you'll hear me say the word "I" quite a bit. But again, it's not about me. I'm just telling you the way I went through my career, my education experience. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and get started. This shown here is Bill the Goat. I will go through my education, but he's the mascot of the United States Naval Academy, which is where I started my post-high school career. So my formal education is I received a BS in electrical engineering, control systems specialty from the Naval Academy. That was, I graduated from there in 1979, and we'll talk about that a little bit. I was fortunate enough then to be offered a scholarship to the United States Postgraduate School, and I received a Master of Science in Electrical Engineering there degree. And then I attended night school and received an MBA from Strayer University, which is a night school back east, and also attended the Defense Systems Management College. It was a 20-week course to teach program management. Eventually, I followed that career path in the Navy and after the Navy. So very good school, and that's located in Fort Belvoir, Virginia. So professionally, that was my education. Professionally, served as a naval officer for 20 years, starting out as an ensign and retiring as a commander. After I got out in the year 2000, I worked for a small company in Fairfax, Virginia called Digital System Resources, and then flew to the West Coast and established my family out here, and worked for Boeing for 13 years. So from 2005 on, we lived in the Yelm area, and my kids all finished up in the Yelm community schools and went on to colleges here locally in Washington State. Okay, a little bit about the military, because that might interest you. The Navy and the Marine Corps are two separate services, but the Naval Academy allows you to be commissioned either in the Navy as an ensign or in the Marine Corps as a second lieutenant. Okay, so that's where you would start your commissioned officer career if you chose to go that way. What you're going to see through the presentation are things highlighted in blue, and I did that just to show you what I did. So I was commissioned an ensign in the Navy. I went into the surface ship force and eventually retired as an engineering duty officer. And I'll kind of go through that a little bit. The rationale for the Naval Academy is to make officers that are commissioned officers that are for combat purposes. So the three primary career paths there are: you drive ships, so surface ships such as destroyers, amphibious ships, aircraft carriers. You go into the submarine community. All of our submarines are nuclear powered now, so you have to qualify as a nuclear submariner, or aviation. where you get to fly off of an aircraft carrier, jets, helicopters, V-22, vertical takeoff, which you can see there down at the bottom. Okay. And that's sort of the initial introduction into your career path. Once you get qualified in one of those three services, you can then move on to something else if you choose, or you can stay in your particular line officer duty. So for example, surface ships, you would be a division officer first, graduate to a department head tour, then to executive officer of a ship, and finally to the commanding officer of a ship. And I went surface ships initially, but as I said, eventually went into the engineering duty community, and I'll describe that in just a second. The pictures there are just various pictures of submarines, surface ships, the aircraft carrier, some of the airplanes that we fly. Some of them are common with the United States Marine Corps and or United States Air Force. So there's a wide variety of career paths you can pick depending on whether you, if you were to graduate from the Naval Academy, whether you would go the Navy route or the Marine Corps route. Okay, so I chose surface ships. I was a division officer of about 23 men at the time, all men. This is a picture of my ship, the USS Henry B. Wilson, DDG-7. I was the anti-submarine warfare officer, which was a great tour of duty. I owned 2 weapon systems, over the side torpedoes for chasing submarines, and also a rocket thrown torpedo system called ASROC, which actually stands for anti-submarine rocket. You could see a launch of an ASROC missile there. It has 2 payloads. One is a torpedo, and the other one is a nuclear depth charge. Never got to fire one of those, thank God. Anyway, that's the ship I served on for 2.5 years, and I was based out of San Diego, California. After I finished my initial tour of duty on that ship, I was offered the opportunity to go on and get my master's degree. The Navy has a post-college education location called U.S. Naval Postgraduate School. It's located in beautiful Monterey, California, south of San Francisco. Clint Eastwood actually lives down in that area, neck of the woods. I wanted to pursue engineering, so I went on and received my Master's of Science in Electrical Engineering with a specialty in digital signal processing. And that all means something, because as you get senior in your career, you find different niches, and a lot of it's often based on your engineering paths, so or your education path. So that's what I chose to do. It interested me. The Navy is a very technical service. So most of the graduates are engineering graduates. However, they do have master's degree career paths in business and public policy, operational information sciences, and international graduate studies. One of the things the U.S. military, and specifically the Navy, does is we host foreign country military students, friendly countries. So Saudi Arabia, United Kingdom, Australians, and they'll send their officers to our schools. So there are quite a few foreign students in our school, foreign naval officers, and I really got to chum with quite a few of them. It was a great experience. Okay, so once I received my master's degree, my first real job was as ship superintendent on the USS Tunney. The Tunney is a nuclear submarine, SSN 682. And on the right, you see a picture of a submarine going through overhaul. That actually was not the Tunney, but it sort of represents the complexity of overhauling a submarine. So my career path led me to become qualified as a senior ship superintendent on that submarine. And I also qualify as a docking officer, which is kind of neat. The docking officer is the officer responsible for running the evolution of putting a ship into dry dock and then taking it back out of dry dock once the repairs are completed. So typically, if you see on the left there, you'll go through a 2-year overhaul. On this ship, it was ready to be refueled, so we did a nuclear refueling. And after it was all done, I got to pull it back out of the dry dock and back into the sea again. What was fascinating was a lot of the maintenance that needed to be done, but 2 modernization programs we did. One was he updated all the weapon systems and combat systems on that particular submarine, so it was completely modernized. And we also installed anechoic coating. If you know what the word stealth means for an airplane, anechoic coating is sort of the stealth for submarines because it prevents the enemy from hearing you, either through pinging against your hull with a sonar or even just listening for the noises that the submarine makes. So this was the first installation of anechoic coating on a submarine, and it was quite an interesting process and project. On the bottom right there, one of the things you get to do as senior ship superintendent is once you go out and do your sea trials, you take the submarine out with the crew, and they test all of their systems, dive real deep, make sure there's no leaks, and we do what's called an emergency blow, which you're seeing there. And emergency blow is an actual emergency situation where if everything else fails and you need to get to the surface real quick, you do an emergency blow, and the submarine will actually pop out of the water like that. It's not something they typically do. Submarines like to be quiet and not seen, but here you see us testing that system out. Okay, so I retired from the Navy in 2000, worked for Digital System Resources for a few years, and then I serendipitously moved to the West Coast where Boeing's based, and so I started a career with Boeing. When I first moved to the area and started looking for a job, Boeing had just received the contract from the Navy to replace the P-3 Orion aircraft, which you see on the right. The P-3 Orion's an anti-submarine warfare airplane. Its job is to go out and find enemy submarines. The system that you see that's sort of highlighted on the right there, I'll talk about in a second. But that system is a metal detector. It's called MAD, stands for Magnetic Anomaly Detector. And they hired me at Boeing to replace that system with the new airplane that we're building, which is the airplane on the left. So the new airplane is called P-8 Poseidon. It's a 737 hull with military systems on there as specified by the Navy. So what's interesting is there's two principal ways to detect an enemy submarine, especially a quiet nuclear submarine. One is to listen for it, and one is to detect the metal object that's underneath the water. So if you see the 2 parachutes there, those are sonobuoys, and basically what it is, it's a microphone that listens for noises, or it can actually ping on the submarine hull to detect the submarine, and then it radios that information back up to its mothership, in this case the P-8 there. Or the other way to detect enemy submarines is from this metal detector called the Magnetic Anomaly Detector. So that was my system, and one of the things the Boeing and the Navy decided is they did not want to put the MAD sensor, the metal detector sensor, on the airplane. Instead, they wanted to mount it on a UAV, unmanned air vehicle, for a variety of reasons. So I worked with the Office of Naval Research to develop this new sensor capability, and I spent most of my time at Boeing developing that for the Office of Naval Research. And this is just a blow up of that unmanned air vehicle. So the sensor would be on the vehicle itself. It can independently fly around, so it's not tied to the airplane, but it reports back to the airplane. And there was a tremendous amount of technology that went into that, and very fascinating program that I was fortunate, very fortunate to be involved in.
So you were really, sorry to butt in, but that's fascinating to me. You were really working on cutting edge technology.
Yeah, and I wasn't the smart person. I was the manager.
Yeah.
So the smart
But
people were
still,
actually down in a company called Polyatomic. They were based in Texas, so I got to fly to Texas and test the systems out, and then eventually we tested the unmanned air vehicle with the system on board. Did some flight testing in Oregon and over in Hawaii. The Navy has a range over there where you can test new airplanes. So it was very fascinating.
that's amazing.
So I want to switch a little bit back to the U.S. military officer commissioning programs. Again, I felt very fortunate I went this career path. There are some options there, and I just like to go through those. So one of them, which you may have heard of at the high school levels, is ROTC, or the Reserve Officer Training Corps. And their job is basically to, as students go through a four-year college, such as the University of Washington or Seattle University, they pay your tuition. You can get a 2-year scholarship or a 4-year scholarship. You get your 4-year degree, and then you are commissioned in the United States Navy or the other services if you choose to go that route. So that's one of the programs that's available to enter the military as a commissioned officer. Another one is Officer Candidate School. And my son actually went through this program. He's currently serving in the Navy as a lieutenant over in Yokosuka, Japan on a cruiser. So Officer Candidate School, if you chose to pay for your own education, you got your degree and went out into the job world and said, you know what, I'm going to explore the military. So they will, if you sign up for it, take you and you go through the Officer Candidate School, which is kind of a boot camp for officers, and they will commission you in the end as a ensign or a second lieutenant. And my son went this route. The problem with this is they don't pay for your education. You've already paid for it. So he graduated from Washington State University, went to Officer Candidate School, was commissioned an ensign, and currently he serves as a lieutenant in Japan on a cruiser, as I was saying. The third route is the Federal Service Academies. Okay. And with each of these, the cost that you pay out of pocket and the obligation that you accrue if the military pays for your education, it varies very widely. So I'll just go through one scenario to kind of give you an example of that. Okay, so at the federal level, United States level, these are the federally funded service academies. United States Army, United States Military Academy at West Point. You've heard of West Point. United States Air Force, they have the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. United States Coast Guard is the Coast Guard Academy in New London, Connecticut. And the United States Merchant Marine is located in Kings Point, New York. Space Command is brand new. Don't know what they're going to do. Probably grab some of the Air Force Academy graduates, and that'll be their de facto academy until they decide otherwise. And like I said in blue there, I went to the Naval Academy. And the asterisk there is just to point a few things out that are unique to the service academy. So, and Nicole can help you with this, but basically, you are congressionally appointed to go to a service academy. Each of the members of Congress, United States Federal Congress, is allowed to appoint 2 persons to an academy. And I was very fortunate to get a United States representative, Harrison Williams was his name, back in New Jersey. He appointed me to the Naval Academy. So it's a 4-year degreed education. You're a full-time student. It's basically boot camp for 4 years. The academies have Division I sports. In fact, I played varsity soccer, and that kind of helped me get into the academy because it certainly wasn't my grades that got me in. So they have pretty good sports programs. Everybody is involved in the sport unless you are physically unable to play. But generally, when you join the academies, you're physically fit. So you play sports and you can either play varsity or intramural sports, but you will play sports. Each of the academies will then commission you either as an ensign or second lieutenant, depending on the academy. It's free tuition, room, and board for 4 years, and they actually pay you a salary while you're there. A lot of that goes towards books and uniforms, but as you get closer to graduation, more and more of that money, because you have your uniforms by then, for example, you put that money in your pocket and you graduate with some money in your pocket. A lot of it's spent it on cars, and I bought a Trans Am. So that's what I spent my money on. Most of them now have a 5-year commitment. So once you graduate, you owe the service 5 years back, actually the American people, because the taxpayers paid for you. And you are eligible for the GI Bill. My master's degree in business administration was actually paid for by the GI Bill. So besides going full-time as a student and get my master's in engineering in Monterey, I also later on went to night school, and that was paid for, and I received an MBA on the GI Bill. And currently they pay up to $25,000 per year if you're eligible for the GI Bill. There's a lot of details that I don't care to get into, but it's a pretty darn good deal. Okay, again, I went to the Naval Academy, and just to give you some statistics on it, you see Ensign U.S. Navy. Again, that's the route I went. In 2020, 519 men and 210 women commissioned as ensigns in the United States Navy, graduates from the Naval Academy. Okay, so quite a few women. It's open now since 1980 to both men and women. For Marine Corps, again in 2020, they commissioned 200 men as second lieutenants and 59 women. And again, some of those went into aviation. Some of them are what we call ground pounders or grunts, people that carry a rifle, or artillery, tanks, flying helicopters, etc., the whole gamut. So that's a picture of Bancroft Hall there on the bottom right. Basically, before you get to eat, you go out there and you form up into a formation, and the band comes out and they play a song, and you have to march in to get your food. But it's a tourist attraction, so and they're the taxpayer, so we get to do that at least once a week anyway. Our crest there on the left is kind of interesting. That's the Naval Academy crest. It says Excellencia Tridens, and that means from knowledge, sea power. That's what it translates to from its Latin origins. Okay, I'm in retirement phase of my life right now, and I view this as time to pay back. I was fortunate. The taxpayer paid most of my education, very little out of pocket. Certainly served in the Navy as payback. Boeing paid for some of my education, and they have their own programs. For example, many industries do. So I was very lucky there. Now I serve back to the community. So I'm the vice president of Yelm Dollars for Scholars this year. Hopefully you guys will apply for Dollars for Scholars scholarship and go from there. The other thing, just as an interesting thing, the other charity that I'm involved in is the Nisqually Valley Trust. What we do is we go out along the Nisqually River. The organization buys old farms from farmers that no longer wish to keep their farms. They buy the land, and we as volunteers go out there and plant trees. So it brings the Nisqually River back into more of a ecological state that supports salmon, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's what I do. And I'm very fortunate in my life that I had the education and career experiences that I have. And so I guess now we open up to questions if anybody's in attendance.
Yes, students, if you have any questions, you can put them in the Q&A. And you touched on one question that I had for you. Was I was going to ask if Boeing offers any education incentives.
They do
for people.
Generally, it's in engineering. So if you choose, for example, to get your doctor's degree, You have to go on your own time, but Boeing will pay for a portion of that, if not all of it. It has to be in something that interests Boeing from a business perspective. So you make a business case that I should get my PhD paid for by the Boeing company so that I can come back and serve the Boeing company better, make the case, and there are opportunities to be able to do that.
Do they like to do that a lot, or do you think they
No, it's
prefer
not.
okay, I was going to ask if they prefer
Yeah,
experience.
it's not a lot. Experience is when I hired on, my master's degree counted for, I believe it was 5 years of experience. So if I had 5 years of experience versus a master's degree in the same engineering technical career path,
Wow.
I would have been hired equivalently. But because I had a master's degree, I didn't have to have the 5 years of experience working for Boeing or somebody else.
What do you think our students, if they're looking towards a career in engineering, whether it's Boeing, your specific type of engineering, or another engineering field, what can they do now to prepare for that education and career?
It's a good question. And I didn't realize how important grades were in high school. But more importantly than that, and kind of associated, is nose to the grindstone. If you want to go into engineering, it's not an easy path. Um, get smart in math, apply yourself, ask questions, take the higher math classes, associate with people that you know are interested in science and math. That's the cornerstone to engineering and physics and probably other technical career paths, but certainly engineering and physics degrees, they heavily depend on math and science. So, put your nose to the grindstone. It's not always easy, but do it.
What was your favorite thing about either your naval career or your Boeing career, or both?
I meandered. I was lucky to get some of the things that I was involved in instead of planning my career from A to Z. I mean, some of these things were just happenstance, like being able to work for Boeing. But as I got involved in them and I got to know the technical expertise that this country has to bear, it's amazing. And to be able to associate with those people and do research and development, not only for the Office of Naval Research, but for the end user to make our military service the best in the world, that was very beneficial to me.
It's honestly, to me personally, your career is fascinating. And I've known
No,
you for 4 years now, and I feel like I'm just learning about your career journey. Um, one of the questions we usually ask, but it's pretty apparent, I think, in your field, is what role STEM plays. But your career was truly STEM: science, technology, engineering, and math. So what other skills would you say were really important for you, like the soft skills, communication,
sure.
etc.,
Um, the
writing skills, that kind of
phrase
thing?
I ever heard was managers manage objects, leaders lead people. And that leadership is not always taught. It's a very difficult thing to actually teach. You have to have the people skills, as you say, to communicate, to empathize, to listen before you talk. There are certainly schools that can teach you that, but that is so important as your career path progresses from a novel engineer or beginning anything, even business person, as your career path becomes more and more of a senior thing, and you're leading people. So leadership school skills are certainly important. You can hone that. Find a person at your organization that's a good leader, and then emulate what they do, and dismiss the things that are bad, or even a good person has bad qualities. So notch that up in your memory and say that I don't ever want to do that.
Well, we are almost out of time. Any other final pieces of advice for our
uh,
students and possibly future engineers?
um, Not so much advice as just to say good luck. God bless you in your endeavors, and God bless America. And in the Navy, we have a little saying. It says, "Fair winds and following seas." So that's my blessing to you. Hope you do well in your life, and don't hesitate to get a hold of Nicole if you'd like to speak to me on the things that I covered today. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you, Frank. I really appreciate it. And we'll hopefully see you soon.
Okay, my pleasure.